There was a lot of effort and patience put into what's called grooming, to creating the opportunity to sexually abuse a victim. Is that right?
Yes, there's
going on?
definitely a lot of patience. It's something I took a lot of time doing, thinking of ways to be left alone, thinking of ways to having a child trust me, my victim trust me, and thinking of ways to be alone with them so I could sexually abuse them. And
So how would you do that?
Oh,
How
I
would
would
you
just
create
like-
that trust?
Oh, I'd say nice things like, well, you're like my little girl, my little princess or something, and buy them a lot of things that, just treat them well, just show them that, well, you know, I bought you this because I think you're my little princess or, you know, my little girl.
So that, when you started that, when you did these things, they were innocent, or they would appear innocent to a parent or anybody else that was watching. They were
Yes.
not sexual things you were doing.
Right.
Is that right?
Right. They were not sexual.
At the time, what was going on in your mind? Was it innocent to you too?
No, I guess what I was trying to do was to gain the child's confidence and trust.
And what was your goal? Besides gaining the trust, for what purpose?
To sexually abuse later on.
How much time would you spend developing that trust?
Oh, God. In one case, it was thought of for 3 or 4 years.
Really?
Just thinking of little ways to make her feel special and trust me.
And all the time you knew that your purpose was to end up sexually abusing?
Eventually, yes.
How would you keep other people from knowing what you were thinking about? How did you keep everyone fooled?
It's quite easy, I guess. I mean, I was trying to be the perfect parent, the perfect friend, the perfect neighbor. Gee, if you want to go somewhere, you know, I'll watch your kids for you, and you know, it won't cost anything. I have to stay home with my own, and I don't know. I was just it was an everyday thing. I was just being an ordinary person, an ordinary dad, an ordinary neighbor.
Is there anything that others could have looked for that might have picked up on those cues that you were doing something that wasn't right, that you were up to no good, so to speak?
Yeah, I think anybody that tries to spend a lot of alone time with a child might be up to something. I tried to spend a lot of time with kids for different reasons, but one of them was to gain trust, and one of them was to be that perfect person so I could fool other people in my life, or my neighbors, parents, my wife.
Did you worry about kids telling on you?
I did. I worried a lot about that, and it just made me work a lot harder at gaining their trust. Most of my victims, they didn't have love at home, and it was easy for me to show them love, and I don't know, it was just easy for me to show them love, and I felt by showing them the love that they wouldn't tell on me, because they needed that love that they weren't getting elsewhere. So I was kind of confident they weren't going to say anything.
Did you trick them or bribe them?
Well, yeah, I tricked them and bribed them a lot. I played games with them when their parents wouldn't, or their brothers and sisters wouldn't, or I'd just do a lot of things with them. And
Nice
I also,
things.
nice things, all nice things. And I bought them things if they had mentioned they needed something, or their parents said they couldn't have something, or
Were there ways that, or things that you did to select your victims? You said most of your kids
yeah.
didn't have love at home. How did you figure that out? What did you look for?
Because I was around there a lot, they would get hollered at a lot, pushed aside, called names, just different things like that, which was, I thought was rude of parents to be doing that. But on the flip side of things, I was using that as my advantage. Most of my grooming and gaining trust was done inside my home, or inside my neighbor's home sometimes. And naturally, when the parents weren't around, some of the parents of the victims, in my opinion, I thought, well, gee, he's taking care of them. Why do I? I can go about my business. I don't, he's doing a real good job. And they didn't much care, I don't think. I really don't think they.
And they thought that about you, that you were taking care of their kids?
Yeah. Why should we? I mean, these were the type of parents they were, and it was sort of the type of parents I was looking for.
There's a lot around like that.
And there are a lot around like that. So just about anybody can be open to that.
Do you think if a teacher or some other adult had watched you, had paid attention to how you were interacting with particular kids, would they have picked up on something bad going on?
I don't think
not?
so. I don't think so. I was pretty good at fooling people. As sad as that is, I was real good at fooling people. One of my victims was my daughter, and I had fooled not only my daughter. I'd tricked my daughter into a lot of things, but I had fooled my wife and tricked my wife. Found ways to get her out of the house, and wanted to babysit and things like that, just so I could be alone with my own daughter. I was a victim of sexual abuse myself, and just through things happening throughout my life, I figured it was just a part of life, and it was okay, although it hurt, but it was okay in some way. It was okay.
You know, that's often hard for people to understand, that somebody who has a child who was sexually abused could turn around as an adult and sexually abuse others. Can you help us understand that?
From me, I think I was looking for answers as to why anybody would have wanted to do that. At the time, I was too ashamed to go and seek help, and looking for answers, or asking for help, asking why anybody would want to do this. I guess it was easier to find out for myself, even though I was hurting somebody.
Did you get any answers?
Not until I got caught. Not until I got caught. It didn't seem, it didn't feel right sometimes. Other times it felt okay. I felt guilty an awful lot of what I was doing. Each time, I didn't know this then, but each time I guess I was looking for answers. And then I just got caught up in a really big web of deceit, and I wasn't finding the answers, and yet I was continuing to hurt my victims.
And your wife?
And my wife. I consider her one of my victims.
When you were a child and you were being sexually abused, do you remember what it felt like to be the victim?
Yeah, but I had mixed feelings. It hurt. I was wondering why it was happening to me. But at the same time, I felt loved. I was getting attention, which is something you didn't get too often in my house, I guess. There was just no show of affection there. There was anger and sex abuse. That's pretty much all we ever seen in our home.
So you understand why it's so hard for kids to tell
I do.
when it's happening to them?
I do, yeah.
Can you think of ways to encourage, do you think they should tell?
Absolutely. They really should tell. Sometimes an abuser may say, please don't tell anybody. You know, like I use it, well, you'll break up the family, you'll never see us again, or you'll never see me again, you'll never see your mom, your brothers, sisters, things like that. But to be honest with you, that was one of the best things that could have ever happened was my victim telling on me. I wholeheartedly am thankful that she had said something.
How could you help other kids to tell? What do you want them to understand? It's
all right to tell. They should tell, because it's never going to stop. An abuser will never stop on his own. He may tell you, well, this will be the last time. Even if it's the first time, he may tell you this will be the last time, but it will happen again and again and again until he's made to stop. I've learned a lot in the last 4 years, and one of the things that I've learned was there are people out there who care. There are people out here who don't want other people sexually abusing children, and there is help if you're man enough to reach out for it.
What keeps you from reoffending?
Now, well, a lot of people know of my situation, for one, and I have a couple of safe people, a safe person, my wife being one of them. She knows all about my crime, and I don't go around children. I especially don't hang around them alone, nor will I, and my wife will see to that. Have another safe person. That's when my wife isn't around. When I first started going to mental health, it was after I got caught, and that was part of what I had to do was go to mental health. So they already knew what was going on with me. I didn't have to tell them anything. I had to go for a psychosexual evaluation, and they had all that paperwork.
After keeping such heavy secrets for so long, to be told, now we're going to reward you for telling. Tell us your whole sexual history. Was that hard to do?
It was, yes and no. It was hard, but it was also a huge relief to finally be able to get a lot of this stuff off my chest, and a lot of it making me the person I was 4 years ago. And it helped turn me into the person I am today, 4 years later. I was carrying around some baggage, some heavy baggage. And I had to tell them things I didn't think I'd have to tell anybody. I was hoping never to tell anybody. And I read part of the evaluation later, I forget where or how. And as I'm reading this, I'm saying, oh my God, I said that. I told them this. I didn't think I'd ever tell anybody that. So I was relieved to get rid of it. It's easy to make up excuses for what you did. But that's all it is an excuse. Because reality, you did exactly what you wanted to do. You had a choice to make, and you made that choice.
So you're saying the therapist needs to be able to challenge the sex offender?
Be able
if
to
they're
challenge.
thinking, if they're distorted thinking?
Yes, sir. It's
Can't just talk about your feelings. Maybe
Right.
need to be confrontive.
What should they do? What has the good therapist done?
He challenged me, and I think that was a big part of my problem, was being challenged. I didn't like being challenged. But it turned out okay. I didn't mind being challenged after a while because the challenge was helping me. I didn't see it at first, but the challenge was helping me.
Why did you stick with it?
Um, well, it felt, I wanted my family back. For one, it was important for me to get my family back. But it also felt good to finally clear your conscience and get some understanding of what you've done in your life. Whether you were the victim or the perpetrator, it was important to get answers. It took 4 years I attended this group, the Safer group, and that's where I got a lot of understanding. It's a group of guys that meet weekly, and it's good support because we know we're not, like I knew I wasn't the only one. Look, I'm sitting in here with 5 other guys that were also offenders, and I learned a lot from them, hearing their stories. I learned a lot from them, and I'm sure, and I hope they learned from me, hearing my stories, and once I was in that group, I knew I wasn't alone, and that I was still ashamed of what I did, and I had to admit this in front of this group of people, including 2 facilitators that were there. So that was still, it was I was still ashamed of that, but it helped me also. So it was finally good to start talking about it. And I got a lot of questions answered in this group.
Did you ever talk about what you'd say to your victim in the group? Or
Oh yes, we had to do this huge clarification letter, and it consists of what happened, how it happened, why it happened, and making it quite clear in that clarification letter that it was not their fault, that it was all the responsibility of me, being the adult.
Well, isn't it just saying, I'm sorry, it's not your
No,
fault?
it's saying a whole lot more than that. It's letting the victim know where you were, where you were at the time of the abuse, what led up to the abuse, and making sure they understand that nothing they said or did made you abuse them, that it was your way of thinking, and it's just it's a really long piece and a real important piece, I might add. I wouldn't have realized that.
But it made you think about aspects of this that you never would have?
Yes. I certainly learned some things from that clarification letter that I didn't think would be any use. Just talking about it, I mean, I wouldn't think it would have been any use. But learning, you have to learn yourself. You have to learn about yourself before you can give answers about what you did and why you did it. And I certainly learned a lot about myself.
Interesting, you keep talking about answers. You talked before about looking for answers before you were caught, and when you were a victim, when you were an abuser, that you were always looking for answers. And now when you're talking about the clarification, you're talking about giving some answers.
Exactly. That's exactly what you're doing. You're giving answers to a lot of questions that you might be asking.
Do you think the child might have a lot of questions too?
Yes, that's what I mean. The child might be asking, well, why did you do it to me?
It's addressed to her?
It's addressed to her and for her. I think it would help her tremendously. She needs to know that it wasn't her fault. And I think she's carried sort of the same baggage I did. That it must have been something I did, or it's my fault, or at least it's a way to get some love.
Anything you would want to say if your victim or victims see this tape or see this interview? Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
I'm sorry. It was not their fault. It was not their fault. All mine. I am responsible. Nothing they said or did made me do this. I did exactly what I wanted to do, exactly what I planned to do, in some way or another. They were not at fault in any way.